Good evening and thank you for stepping into the Foul Playland. As always, I'm your Foul Player. I wanted to make a video regarding a topic which I may have touched on before, and that's the Jets acquiring, or the Jets should acquire, the disgruntled left tackle of the Washington Redskins, the one Trent Williams. Um, I haven't gone back and forth on this issue too much, but I've gotten scared off by the restrictiveness as far as price goes in acquiring Trent Williams. Not so much to the point where if we got him when I was doubting myself about his restrictive price, that I would have been pissed off, but more so like just thinking of long-term ramifications and the fact that he has been disgruntled in the Redskins with the Redskins at certain points of his career. But any doubt that I had, I mean, I think that's out the window now. I think the Jets should do put forth a valiant effort and try to acquire the guy. And I have my reasons to. In the midst of this quarantine, I've been doing a lot of mock drafts on my own, using draft simulators at times. And this doesn't happen very often in which I do these mock drafts or mock draft simulations, but it does happen maybe a quarter of the time in which I do my draft with the Jets, drafting at pick number 11, as many of you may know. And when I do that draft, none of the four top tackles are there. As far as Andrew Thomas, Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wills, and Tristan Wirfs. What's left to pick at that pick is to either reach for a tackle, a la Josh Jones, or the tackle out of USC, which I wouldn't pick unless it was in the second round, frankly, or unless we drop down deeper into the first round. I wouldn't draft neither one of those guys, to be frank. But or take a receiver if none of those four top tackles are there. Having said that, I want to safeguard the Jets from doing that or having to be forced into reaching for a tackle, or be content if the four top tackles come off the board and you have to take a receiver. Well, it's not that as big of a deal because you get a weapon for Sam Darnold, and you cover your bases because you've already acquired Trent Williams. Another thing is that when I do these draft simulations or mock drafts, is that most of the times only one of those tackles is there, and that's Mekhi Becton in most of these cases. Mekhi Becton is I would take Mekhi Becton at the 11th pick personally. I mean, if he were there or if he were my only option, I'd take him. But out of all those top tackles, he's the one that teams the most experimentals. I mean, you could say Tristan Wirfs too, but Mekhi Becton is the one that I could see maybe having to be relegated to the right tackle spot more than any of the other guys. I think Wirfs could slide into guard and do well. I actually think that Wirfs should play guard in the next level, but that's another conversation. But if you're stuck with, like, let's say either Wirfs or Mekhi Becton, and you have a Trent Williams on your roster already, I mean, to put Mekhi Becton at the right tackle, I think he's seems like he's just designed for it. To put any of those guys at the right tackle spot, all of a sudden your offensive line becomes a weapon from hell. It's a transformative change. Because I think no matter what, we should draft a tackle with that number 11 pick. If those four guys are there, if one of those four guys are there, but if you do pick a tackle, in addition to acquiring Trent Williams, it just drastically changes your offensive line overnight. I mean, if Trent Williams is disgruntled, I mean, then we can move on from him in a couple of years, or next year, or in a couple of years, depending on the contract that we extend him to, if we acquire him. if Trent Williams loses a step, we could probably slide the guy that we draft into the left tackle spot and not skip too much of a beat. I just think that it's really good either way. I mean, like, I have debates on like who I would take for the Jets if I were choosing between Mekhi Becton and Jerry Jeudy, and I only have that debate because of the big time need that the Jets have. But if the Jets already have Trent Williams on their roster, and that decision is placed upon me, then it becomes a real debate because Jerry Jeudy is going to be a gamer at the next level. Um, but it's just something that the Jets should do. Um, I know they're going to have to extend them and give him a pay raise. I mean, I'm hearing that he's not looking to become the top paid left tackle, and I would be scared to do that too. But I'd be willing to do that. But I think that's a more extreme case, and I don't think that's what's gonna happen. I think paying him 18 million, that's a good investment. I think if it were all, I've made videos in the past. If it were between paying him and paying our top flight safety that which we already have in the roster, I'd pay the left tackle. I mean, like, you could find safeties elsewhere. Elsewhere, I've made that case before. It's safeties, defensive tackles, linebackers could be had. You could find guys like that in the middle rounds. I mean, it's hard to find offensive linemen and defensive ends, and I'd rather go into the draft not so desperate to fill holes like the Jets are going to be doing this coming year. I mean, I'm praying that Joe Douglas is a good drafter or is competent with his picks. I think it's a little bit easier for us, believe it or not, because of the needs that we have. I mean, our game plan is already written out for the Jets, but these are the Jets, and I mean, bad decisions have been made in the past, and it could happen again, and we always got to fear that too. But I'd rather cover our bases before we even get to the draft. You're hearing a lot of people are not willing to give up what the Redskins are asking for. I mean, that deal could be made. Who knows? I mean, like the cost in draft pick compensation might not be so restrictive either. I mean, we have 2 picks in the third round. I mean, one is at the tail end. I mean, maybe that could be a starting point for the Jets to offer that up. I mean, if not, maybe we could bump it up to our first third round pick, which is third in the third round, I believe. The second round pick is a little bit more scary to give up, but I'd even be willing to do that, quite frankly. I mean, maybe we get a lower round pick back to sweeten the deal, but I'd probably be willing to do it for that second round pick, because you never know what kind of receivers are going to be available to us at that second round pick. And I'm going to make a video about that later on tonight as to what the Jets should do with that second pick, and some prospects that I think may fall down to us and that the Jets should be all over. I'm going to do a similar giant video like that too, but I hope you guys are staying safe and not going crazy in the midst of this coronavirus, quarantine, whatever have you. And take care of yourself and go New York.